What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and you know how much I love these grading report videos, and this one is no exception. Listen, there is Lorcana on here. Remember, this isn't just Pokemon, this is about all TCGs. So there's Lorcana on here, there's some Pikachu with gray hat references in here, there's a shakeup in the Japanese market mentioned in here as well. Like, this video has all kinds of cool stuff, and I am so excited to get it in front of you. But outside of all of those cool things, listen, this to me is the best way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market, because there's always noise, right? When the market's going up, there's noise. When the market's coming down, there's noise. There's all this chatter. But what this is this is black and white. This is actual data from the big four grading companies. So PSA, SGC, CGC, Beckett, and how the cards are performing in regards to grading volume. Now, I will say this, we're going to double click and drill down into PSA, because as you'll see on the next slide, like, PSA's grading volume is here and everybody else is a distant second at best. So it is most important for us to double click on PSA, because I think that's going to give us, a better overall feel of what's going on in the hobby. Now, I will say this, I believe that overall market strength is more important than current prices. Prices are going to go up, prices are going to go down. Like I just said, things get hot, things get cold. But for me, as a long-term collector and a long-term investor, what I want is I want people active and involved and spending their hard-earned money in the hobby in terms of getting cards graded and buying and selling. And like, to me, that just goes to show that even though prices might be falling right now, there's enough people who are engaged that in the future, there's going to be a bunch of waiting arms open to buy the stuff that at some point I'm going to want to sell. So when I talk about grading report videos and why they get me so excited and why I feel like they're the best finger on the pulse of the overall market, that is why. Now, as I said, listen, we do this every single month, so if this kind of stuff gets you excited, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. Those three small things go a long way in helping my channel out. Lets me know you appreciate the work that I put in. So let's get into it. Now, as I said, the graph on the left shows you the PSA grading volume versus Beckett, CGC, and SGC. As you can see, there's just no freaking comparison, right? PSA is all the way up there. Everybody else is down below, so much so that the other ones are broken out there to the right, so you can actually do a comparison of those three versus each other. But hey, I'm a PSA guy. I'm always very transparent with that, but I'm also cheering for somebody else to come and maybe not dethrone PSA, but at least give them a run for their money, right? Like, all markets do well when there's an A and a B, right? Apple needs Samsung, AT&T needs Verizon, McDonald's needs Wendy or Burger King. Everybody needs some competition, and right now PSA is kind of just the big dog in the pack, and nobody else is really catching up. Now, I will say this, PSA was close to flat in the TCG space, but overall grading was down, and those are the type of things that just, again, give me faith in the strength of the TCG market, right? Like, overall, PSA's grading volume was down 5%. However, specifically in the TCG space, that grading space was up 1% and up 26% year over year, which is really, really awesome. Now, the other thing I wanted to call out, if you look at the graph in the middle, look at SGC. Look at how they had this steady climb. SGC might be gaining some momentum. In this video series, it's not uncommon to see, individual grading companies. Like, look at Beckett. They'll go up and down and up and down and up and down. But what I look for, again, as a data guy, is I look for trends, and I look for long-term trends. And it looks to me like SGC is starting to gain some momentum, and they have that kind of up into the right trend line. So that's really, really interesting. Now, as I just referenced, Beckett, then that up, down, up, down, up, down, they've basically been flat for all of 2023. Now, I am a huge Beckett fan, so my fondest memories are sprinting to the mailbox as a kid and getting the Beckett magazine, because the internet didn't exist, so that's the only way I could tell the prices of my cards. So I'm always cheering for Beckett, but again, they have had a rough 2023 in terms of growth. So now, the CGC numbers, look at that huge spike. I'm going to show you a slide here next, which is going to show you why that happened. They've partnered with a company in order to do these boxes, these mystery boxes, which are filled with CGC graded cards. So take that with a big grain of salt. That's not something that gets me excited about a grading company, right? Like, I want the people like you and me who are investing in this hobby, who really want to see their cards, appreciate and price over time. Those are the ones who I want to see that are having them graded by CGC, not some big company that's just looking to sell, mystery boxes and make a couple bucks. So listen, really interesting stuff to see here. But again, PSA is the big dog, and I love it when you look at the graph on the right or the chart on the right. These are just items graded in November of 2023, specifically in the TCG space. PSA's up 1%, CGC's down 44%. Take that with a grain of salt. Poor Beckett is down 31%. And SGC, as I talked about, who's showing some strength, they are up 7%. Now, This is what I wanted to call out too. We talk about seasonality, right? There's a seasonality to most things. Look at this. This is 2022 versus 2023, okay? And overall PSA grading volume. So look, they're following the same pattern. Now, I will say that the PSA opened up a grading center specifically in Japan. So they have not always had a grading center in Japan. This just opened, I think, in June or July. Back then, people in Japan who wanted to get their cards graded by PSA, they literally had to ship them to California. So think about the risk involved in that, the turnaround time involved in that. So PSA opened a grading center directly in Japan, and we have seen Japanese grading volume absolutely spike, and overall PSA grading volume has been a benefit of that as well. So even with that going on, we are still seeing the same trend line there, which is really cool to point out. Now, getting into here, this is the mystery box that I was telling you about. These are the Omega mystery boxes. Each of them contain 10 different CGC graded cards in it. So I am not a big mystery box thing. I'm not a big mystery pack thing. Like, at the end of the day, the only person who makes money on that is the person who's making them. So not for me, not my cup of tea, but these are all sold out, so somebody has been interested in them. Really interesting product, and again, this is why we saw that big jump in CGC grading volume. So getting into this, now we're talking about the most graded sets, and I talked in the beginning about a shakeup in the Japanese space. Now, Japanese sets have absolutely dominated this list. There have been 8 of 10 on here every single month, and they still retain the number 1, number 2, and number 3 for the most graded sets, right? We still got Japanese 151, no surprise, V-Star Universe, and that Scarlet and Violet promo are still 3 of the most graded quote-unquote sets here. But listen, we've got some English coming on board, and Lorcana is making an appearance. How cool is that? I didn't know if Lorcana would ever have, the collector base or, the throughput in order to make it on this list, because let's face it, Pokemon is the big dog in the TCG space, but I think it's really, really encouraging and really cool to see Disney Lorcana, even though they're at the very bottom. Just making this list is a huge feather in the cap for Lorcana, and any of you who are out there collecting it, this is definitely good signs for that. So speaking about the English, like, it was always Crown Zenith in 1999 Pokemon set. The 1999 set includes base set, unlimited, shadowless. All of them are just lumped into that one. But now we have Obsidian Flames, right? And Scarlet and Violet Black Star promos. Like, this is the very first time we've ever seen Scarlet and Violet. Like, Scarlet and Violet is at the 1 year mark, right? We're heading into January. It's been out almost a year now, but this is the first time we've seen any Scarlet and Violet sets actually make this list. So that is really encouraging and really, really cool. Now, what did fall off this? I talked about some of the Japanese sets that had been dominant for so long falling off. Eevee Heroes fell off, Triple Beat fell off, Sun and Moon Dream League fell off, and the 25th anniversary set fell off. So hey, listen, good news for some of these English sets. Awesome to see Disney Lorcana on here, and this is just another reason why I love these videos so freaking much. So outside of the sets, now we're looking at the most graded cards. So listen, that Japanese 151 Pikachu art rare, the Triple Beat Magikarp, and the Pikachu pre-orders are the only repeats, right? Outside of that, all of these are brand new, okay? That's because the Unagaba X basically dominated this list last month. So it's really exciting to see some of these cards on here. And look, I talked about it. The Pikachu gray felt hat makes a freaking appearance, which is really interesting to me. I didn't know how many of them were printed. None of us did, right? So none of us had any idea how much was printed, but to see that there were enough printed and enough of them being graded in order to make this list tells me that there's probably a lot more out there than any of us realize. And then I love the fact that the Yokohama deck promos are on there. I think that card's an absolute stunner. So it's really, really interesting. Now, one of the things that's cool about this list here is you see the gem rate from last month and you see the all-time gem rate right here. Now, we've been doing this video for longer than almost any other series here on the channel, and almost without exception, every single time you will see the current month's gem rate is less than the all-time gem rate. That is not the case this month, which is really fascinating. Only 4 of the 10 gem rates are down, which is super, super cool to see. Usually it's like 8 of 10 are down, 9 of 10 are down. We've had months where 10 of 10 are down, but now only 4 of the 10 all-time gem rates are down. 2 of them are flat and 4 are actually up. I have always had this hypothesis that it's the earlier you get your card to PSA for grading, the better, simply because, again, after doing this for over a year, we've always seen that the monthly gem rate is lower than the all-time gem rate, which would imply getting your cards there early, give you a better opportunity of getting a PSA 10 gem mint. There's nothing to verify that, just going off the data, but it's really interesting, at least for this month, to see that flipped up on its head. Now, getting into the very next stuff right here is the PSA grades by category. I started tracking this in December of last year because I had this hypothesis. I said, One of the reasons I transitioned from the sports card market over into the TCG market was because I felt like sports cards weren't necessarily dying, but I did feel like the TCG space was ready to explode in popularity. Like I felt like TCG could totally overtake all the big ball sports, which is what I call them. I probably shouldn't call them big ball sports. We'll just call it baseball, basketball, football. Keep this PG on the PikaPikaPaPa channel. But I felt like the TCG space was going to take over, you know, the big three in terms of overall popularity. And it's been interesting to watch that evolution happen. So you'll see in blue, like those are the first, I don't know, 7-8 months where we started tracking this. And on the left, you see the total number of TCG cards graded. On the right, you see the total number of ball sports that were graded. And you'll see that the mix was really in favor of ball sports for the first 6, 7, 8 months where we started tracking this. But then look at the absolute shift that happened in July. Now, again, remember, in July, PSA opened that grading facility in Japan. So we've seen a whole lot of Japanese cards get graded. But at the end of the day, who cares? So the TCG to ball sport percentage. In July, it was way in favor of TCG. In August, it was pretty close. September, in favor of TCG. In October, pretty close. In November, in favor of TCG. These are very exciting things. If you're a TCG collector, it is awesome to see the TCG space, the Pokemon space, overtaking the big three ball sports. For long-term interest, again, what I care about is a strong hobby and strong just engagement overall. So seeing this makes me feel really, really good. And it's been fascinating to watch that transition happen. Now, coming in at this, the most graded subjects for me, this is a boring slide, but I'm going to continue to include it because guess what? It never changes. The only thing that has been a fundamental shift that has been worth talking about is up until 5 months ago, Charizard was the #1 most graded Pokemon in terms of grading volume, and Pikachu overtook that crown. Personally, I thought, oh, this is going to be just a flash in the pan. There's no way Pikachu will retain the #1 mark, but for 5 consecutive months in a row, Pikachu has been the most graded subject in the TCG space, with Charizard coming in at second. Now, the other thing that's been really cool to watch is Marnie. So we don't typically see trainers on this list for any long period of time, right? They'll pop up, they'll pop off. For example, we have Lily on here this month. I'd be willing to bet the next month she won't be on there. And in the beginning, I kept saying, well, Marnie's here for 1 month, she'll be off. And then, well, she's here 2 months. Well, it's a good run for Marnie. Marnie has been on this list for like 6 months now. So there's something to be said about the overall collector interest in Marnie. So it is really, really cool. Then you see Zapdos and Rayquaza. They climb, and a big jump for Charmander. If you watched my video on the top 10 cards that have exchanged hands the most at TCG player, that Charmander card from 151 has a lot of love, and I guarantee a bunch of people are sending it through and getting it graded. Now, this is a slide you got to take with a whole lot of grain of salt. Don't make grading decisions based off of this. You should grade with the company that you believe in the most. You should grade with the company where you love their slab, where it makes you happy. But this is gem rates by era. And the thing that I love about this, my man at gemrate.com, which is where I pull all this data from, I know he watches these videos. I know you're out there, Ryan. And I talked about how I wanted to see SGC broken out by sports and TCG, and he went ahead and did that for me this month. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. So now we can really start comparing apples to apples, right? You can look at PSA's TCG gem rate. You can look at Beckett's TCG gem rate. SGC and CGC, you can do the exact same thing. The other thing that I think is really cool, like we talk about quality here in the US, here in the Pokemon space. We're like, oh my gosh, quality sucks, quality's this, quality's that. Look at the sports card space, unequivocally across the board. Like look at PSA for the 2020s. The gem rate in the sports card space is under 50%. Here in the TCG space, it's up over 65%, right? It's absolutely crazy. So the quality of Pokemon cards and TCG cards in general seems to be superior to that of sports cards. Now, I will put an asterisk next to that and say, listen, this includes Japanese cards. We know Japanese TCG cards are of super high value or super high quality, and those typically, have a really, really high gem rate. But I don't think it's a 15, 16% gem rate difference. So all I'm going to say is this. Sometimes we think about how terrible the quality is, but just look how tough it could be if you were still, or if like me, still in the sports card space. But it's really interesting to see all these different gem rates over time. And again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like obviously the Beckett TCG, their gem rate is going to be higher because a lot of people send to Beckett trying to get those black labels, right? So even if you think a card is perfect, you send it through, only 2% of all cards end up with a black label. So I think a lot of cards fall short of the black label, but obviously they end up in a gem mint holder there at Beckett. So again, just a fun slide, a lot of cool data to look at, and I'm really, really thankful that we can now compare all 4 companies directly, TCG versus TCG versus TCG versus TCG. Super, super cool stuff to look at here. Now, overall cards graded at PSA by month. Now, I've talked about it a couple times on this video, but since that Japanese grading center opened in July, it has absolutely been insane. I mean, look at the grading volume over those last 6 months. 514,000, 532,000, 500,000, 576,000, 533,000, 536,000 cards. It is absolutely insane. The grading volume, I think the overall hobby, everything, the growth, the trend line, all of this just indicates a really strong hobby. Again, don't let short-term price fluctuations affect your overall long-term outlook for the hobby. I think the hobby's strong. I think a lot of people are engaged, and I think it's really cool to look at this stuff here. Now, overall, again, I wanted to specifically call out those 2 points right there. We're going to hit some seasonality, so the volume might end up coming down again. If it does, it's totally fine. As long as it follows seasonality trends, it just kind of is what it is. So far, we're following, the exact same pattern. And the other thing that I hear too is, especially in the Discord, we're starting to hear about a lot of PSA submissions that are coming back much faster than their quoted turnaround time. So bulk values coming back, in 3 or 4 weeks versus the, 6 or 8 weeks that it's taken in the past, sometimes 3 months. So it's really interesting. That's usually a good indication too. If you have your finger on the pulse, if you're in different Discord channels or you hear different people talking about it, a lot of times when turnaround times are quicker, that means that the grading volume is starting to drop a little bit. And as I've said before, listen, the hobby's super strong. I feel really good about where we're at. I am very happy to be 2 feet firmly planted in the TCG space. I think we have nothing but a lot of room to run in the future. Are there things that need to be tweaked? Absolutely. Could things be better? Absolutely. Do I think there are certain opportunities that the Pokemon company is going to have to address in order to make sure that, hey, listen, in the long run, it can survive another 10, 20, 50 years? Of course, but that's the nature of business. Every business needs to go through that, right? Everybody needs to learn and evolve and change, and Pokemon Company has proven over the years that no matter what comes their way, they can find a way to survive, and not only survive, but also thrive. So overall, I feel really, really good about the market. I love these types of videos, and as I said, if you made it to the end and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. If you like what you saw, give us a thumbs up. Questions or comments, drop them down below. As always, I appreciate you, and you all have an epic one. Thanks, everybody. Bye.